Post from I_through_the_fork. What is your creepiest true story? Comment from Artimi. Had a guy knock on my front door in the middle of the day and kept hiding off to the side so I couldn't see who it was. Yelled loudly that I was calling the cops and got a good look at his van as he drove off. Reported it. Later that week, van and dude were in the news as a serial killer finally arrested. I almost opened the damn door to yell at him in the face. Comment from onijin. I have exploding head syndrome. Take a minute to Google it if you like. My understanding of it is it's a seizure in the auditory bits of your brain that cause perception of a giant fucking noise like an explosion or a car crash. It usually comes on right at sleep onset when I'm super tired. Before I knew what the fuck it was, I'd already learned to just ignore super loud noises and go to sleep. One day I had a real bad bout of the noises and was getting frustrated at not being able to sleep and started screaming obscenities every time I woke up. That afternoon I woke up to find that my back door had been kicked in. But nothing was stolen. I went to check my cameras, was living in a super high crime area. Best $200 I ever spent, and apparently the burglar kicked in the door. And I immediately screamed, "Motherfucker. Not again," and he bolted back out the door. Comment from deleted. Went camping with family. Me and one of my cousins were at the pool and saw a guy in the bottom of the pool and said, "God. That guy's over there for some time. Is he dead?" He was. Edit. Yes. There is a pool in that camping park. Please get over it. Comment from mindaq. Back in high school, I was on antidepressants. I was receiving help from my family doctor rather than a psychiatrist. There's generally a week to 2 week transition period where you have some undesirable side effects. Usually nothing too major though. I was home alone taking a bath, trying to relax. I distinctly remember hearing a dark, eerie, ominous voice say, "Someone is here. Better check your closet." I tried to forget about it, but I was close to having an anxiety attack at that point and got out. Wrapped myself in a towel, and warily checked the linen closet right outside the bathroom. The voice comes back and says, "Wrong closet." So, I go check my bedroom closet. Heart pounding and sweating at this point. After feeling a huge wave of relief that nothing was actually there, I hear the creepy voice emit this evil, demonic-like laugh fading off into the distance. Once I started seeing an actual psychiatrist. They took me off that med real fucking quick, because apparently it can cause hallucinations. Comment from heyfolksletsparty. I was working as a waitress at a bar in the city, and this guy got overserved and was being pretty rowdy. He had grabbed my arm and tried pulling me over to him, so we cut him off and sent him on his way. As I was locking up the patio maybe an hour later, he wanders up to the edge from the parking lot, seemingly sobered up a bit. I was smoking as I worked and he called over to me and asked to bum a cigarette. I was like, "Sure. I'm not a huge dick." I walked over and went to hand him one, and he jumped up on the edge of the porch and grabbed my wrist and pulled me up to him. He looked into my eyes with this wild, weird look and says, "I will fucking find you and it will be soon." I flipped out and leveraged my foot against the railing to get out of his grasp and booked it inside. I sat at a nearby Waffle House until morning, paranoid he was going to try and follow me home or something. Probably just a drunk asshole trying to get his rocks off on scaring a teenage girl, but goddamn it worked. Comment from lizashea. When I was a little girl I was playing on the beach by myself. This was pretty normal as my family owned a condo that sat directly on the beachfront. I got bored, decided it was time to go home and started walking back towards my place. I was passing my street's beach entrance, which is a pathway in between the sand dunes protecting the beach, and I noticed an older man just standing there. I immediately got a creepy vibe but decided to just walk by him anyways. As I did, he looked directly at me and screamed, "I am going to screw you." I ran all the way back home as quickly as I could and of course told my mom what happened. I had to ask her what screw meant. Not the creepiest story, but I wasn't allowed on the beach by myself after that. Comment from Sheamus. Posted this before, many years back. Posting again as it was genuinely terrifying and absolutely true. Many years ago, I lived in a big, old, 3-story house that had a room on the middle level that we converted into an office. I used to write financial reports late at night that were published early the next morning. The office had a few computers and my toddler son had been playing on one of them for most of the evening, right up until I finished my work at around 9 p.m. By then he had fallen asleep. so I switched off his monitor, scooped him up and took him to bed, flicking off the light as I left. For the next couple of hours I relaxed in another room watching TV with my wife. She went to bed around 11 p.m. and at midnight I decided to do the same. I realized I'd left a window open in the office, so I went in there to close it. The house was silent, and the room was pitch black dark and ice cold when I walked in. Colder than it should have been for the time of the year. Even with the window open. I paused for a moment in the center of the room to think about this. And then it happened. Knock, knock, knock. Something was tapping on the glass. But it wasn't the random tappings of a bird or another kind of animal. It was completely uniform. It sounded human. But I was on the second floor. So how was that possible? It was so dark that I couldn't make anything out against the black glass. But a few moments later it happened again. Knock, knock, knock. By now I was already feeling on edge. Then, something happened that chilled me to the core. Because out of the corner of the room, to my right, and from the darkness, a high-pitched, almost squeaky voice began to speak quite loudly. I can see you. I froze on the spot. My blood went cold. My bowels prepared for evacuation. My God. I thought. I never wrote that book. Any book. It spoke again. But with greater emphasis on that all-important word. I can see you. I determined that I was almost certainly fucked. So I figured, what the hell? I turned slowly to my right and walked into the darkness, until I finally reached my son's computer. Nothing there but an empty chair. But no talking now. Just silence. A horrible silence. Carefully, I reached over and switched on the monitor. The screen brightened, and there it was. Something red and horrible. Once again it tapped on the glass. It was fucking Elmo from my kid's Sesame Street game. Comment from Tankopotamus. Back in 3rd grade, one was spending the night over at my best friend's house when his older sister coerced us into playing Bloody Mary sometime after midnight. Eventually my turn comes and I manage to utter the words at the mirror and leave the bathroom only a little lot scared. Soon me and my friend go to bed and I wake up violently around 3 a.m. because I heard something. I go to wake my friend up. We were sharing his bed and he is gone. I freak the fuck out and hide under the sheets until morning and then work up the courage to tell his parents that Bloody Mary took him. Turns out the asshole got scared in the middle of the night and slept with his parents. Bloody Mary may not be true, but back then I was convinced she took my best friend. Comment from CL0UDBR34K. Comment from ajstraw. When I was in high school I had a huge crush a guy a couple years older than me. He was on the boys' basketball team and I was on the girls' team. I would always try to get him to play basketball with me at our town's outdoor basketball court. He usually declined. One night in the middle of winter he asked if I wanted to come play one-on-one with him. I thought it was weird he wanted to play basketball in the middle of night in winter, so I had my friend come with. She got bored quickly and he was being really flirty with me, so I agreed she could leave. He assured her he would drive me back to her house. I was spending the night there. About 30 minutes later I'm feasing and ask him to drive me back. We get in his car and he tells me he has to warm the car up before we can go. He's on his phone for about 10 minutes and we are sitting there in silence. Out of nowhere he starts telling me about his sexual fetishes and how he gets off on physically causing other people pain. He said that no one really knows the real him, and if they did it would scare the living shit out of most people. I'm starting to get uncomfortable at this point and ask if we can leave. He pulls out of the parking lot and starts driving the opposite direction of my friend's house. We lived in a small town and he drives about 5 miles out of town and turns on a gravel road. He tells me he's going to take me to meet some people he thinks would really like me. He then tells me I seem like the type of girl who would like being submissive to a bunch of men. And he wouldn't even have to make me beg for it. So I'm getting really freaked out and scared at this point. I'm looking for my cell phone and remembered I had left it at my friend's house to charge. I start asking him questions to distract him. I'm finally able to get my hands on his phone when he stops at the shack. I'm in the middle of nowhere. He isn't aware that I have his phone at this point and tells me to get out of the car because his friends are waiting inside and we don't want to make them mad. I dial 911 and tell him if he doesn't take me back to my friends I'm calling the police right then. He looks really shocked and then starts laughing hysterically. He tried to convince me this was all a big joke and he wanted to see how I would react. I held his phone with 911 ready to go the entire ride back to my friends. Once he pulled in the driveway and I got out of the car, he rolled down his window and said, "I would really appreciate it if you never tell anybody about this," and peeled out. I was 15 years old and should have called the cops. But I was young and dumb. Comment from BigWeitz. I was performing an evisceration autopsy on a person that had committed suicide in their barn. Shotgun in the mouth. Followed by 3 days of collecting fly larvae before being found. We had removed all the organs from the chest and abdominal cavities and were about to begin the neck dissection. While standing at the head of the person, a very large black fly crawled up the back of the tongue. It just stared back for a very long 2 to 3 seconds and then slowly backed its way down the tongue, not to be seen again. Comment from Hakobus. The year is 2002. It's late at night and I'm driving to my parents' house that's some way outside the city. Basically in the middle of nowhere. A truck cuts me off at an intersection on my way to the highway. I had right of way and would have plowed straight into the truck if I hadn't slammed on the brakes. I honk the horn at him and give him the middle finger, which I doubt he sees, and pass him as we get on the highway. A little while later I turn off the highway and notice that the same truck turns the same way. The roads are smaller and it's dark. So I'm driving at the speed limit and the truck catches up to me. He's getting uncomfortably close, and even though I start speeding up, he just gets closer and closer. When the truck is like 3 feet from my rear bumper, I accelerate as fast as I can and get a couple of 100 yards between us so I can quickly turn at the next intersection. He follows. I hit the accelerator and turn again when the next intersection comes along. So I'm racing down these country roads that are barely wide enough for the truck, and this asshole is keeping up. My heart is beating like crazy. But I also know the area and the roads. And as we get into roads that run through the woods, I turn off my headlights. Drive like a maniac and manage to turn to an even smaller road without him possibly seeing me take the turn. I can't keep driving because I know the road just goes to a cabin and ends there. So I come to a stop a bit down the road and to the side. So the trees will cover me. And turn off my engine. Then I wait. After a while I can see his headlights on the road I turned off from. He's driving slower now. He stops at the intersection and shines a flashlight down the road to where I am. He's looking at my direction for what feels like minutes, and I hope the flashlight can't reach all the way to where my car is. Finally he drives away. I wait for 5 more minutes and then head back to the main road and continue to my parents' house. TLDR. Honked at truck driver. He insisted on trying to follow me home. Comment from AmandaTwisted. I was working in a convenience store. 19 years old. Single mom. Luckily this day I wasn't alone. This guy came in, walked around and then went back to pump his gas. Then drove off without paying. I got the tag number. Called the police per policy and didn't expect anything to come from it because that's what always happened. Gas theft just wasn't a priority to the police department. To my surprise, less than an hour later, an officer walks in and asks me to identify the guy, which I did. I really didn't think too much of it. Just happy they caught the asshole. I went on about my business. Went home. Got on with life. The next day the manager calls me early. Tells me that she saw the guy who I had identified on the news. He was wanted for 2 counts of murder. He had murdered a female jogger, no apparent motive, and a convenience store clerk that he had kidnapped after robbing her. I assumed she was mistaken because that just seemed too crazy. Something I did helping catch a murderer just seemed unlikely. Later that day the officer came by and told me it was true and thanked me. Without the tag number they may not have caught him until he had hurt me women. She also told me that the reason that the police caught him quickly was the car was stolen. Then the officer told me the scariest part of all. Coming in and walking around the store is exactly the same thing he did before the robbery kidnapping of the second woman he murdered. I will never know exactly why he didn't rob me or worse. I assume it was because my manager was there, which was unusual. I'm just grateful for whatever it was. This was early 2003 or so and I'm in a small southern city, so it's doubtful it'll still be online, but I will check. Edit. I found this. This discusses the case. I wouldn't expect how he was caught to be mentioned. I actually had no idea he had gotten the death penalty at all. http://www.foxcarolina.com. Story 27,549,032. Man gets life in prison in murder rape cases after death row case overturned. VQTEECVI Inc. Mailto. Comment from eatmyboot. This is my friend's story. She was sleeping in on Halloween morning. She was having a vivid dream that she was having an out-of-body experience. Floating above herself. She was trying everything to wake herself up. She was screaming, "We'll say, Maggie, Maggie, wake up. You have to wake up right now. You have to buy the kids Halloween candy." Getting up early, especially on a weekend morning, was extremely out of character for Maggie. She woke up in a panicked sweat, throws on some clothes and leaves in a hurry because for some reason, getting Halloween candy is super fucking important right now. Once she comes back home, she opens the door and is hit immediately by the strong scent of gas. Her roommate accidentally left the gas stove on and gas had filled the entire house. She believes, as do I, in some unconscious, last-ditch effort to save herself. She had this out-of-body dream to wake herself and leave the house immediately. Comment from Seriousdolla. These kids at my primary school were in the showers playing a trick where they would push you under a hot shower to burn you. One of the kids fiddled with the water system to make it extremely hot and tricked a kid to come close enough so he could push him under. He had third-degree burns and we could hear his screams from all the way outside. The kids responsible didn't get any discipline afterwards because the mother of the victim was quite timid and never pushed the issue with the school. Those kids got off scot-free and are grown adults now. Comment from Fluttersblade. Sister saw some birds circling around behind a store right after a torrential downpour of snow. A friend and I ended up finding an actual body after going out back behind the store. Comment from Deleted. Creepiest true story that I remember from when I was very young. We had a nice old neighbor, male, probably in his 70s or early 80s, that lived across the street from us and had a big beautiful black lab. His name was Lee, fake name, and her name was Booger, and she was the nicest dog ever. Well, we used to see Lee out on his porch all the time or in his yard, and we would always say hi, and sometimes my dad would go and have some beers with him later in the evening. Really nice guy. Anyway, came this hot summer. I mean hot. 110 degrees for at least a month. In Michigan. That's ridiculous. We didn't see Lee out on his porch or the yard for a couple of days. But we figured he was probably staying inside with the AC, being as he was an older fella. We went to visit my aunt for 3 days after that because she was awesome and had a pool lol. When we came back, my dad went to visit Lee, and I just remember everyone being really upset. Not just an old man died, upset. My dad was puking in the grass when he came back. Even an hour later, he wouldn't talk about it. Even to my mom. I know he gave a statement to the police, and I remember seeing them taking Lee's dog away. I was crying because Booger was a nice dog and I wanted to keep her if Lee had died. I didn't understand what had happened at the time. It wasn't until I was older that my dad finally opened up to me about it. He was drunk when he did. He needed to get it off of his chest. He had never even told my mother. They were divorced by the time he told me. He said that he went in the house and the smell was horrible. Thick, almost oily, like you could feel it coating your mouth. He said that the first thing he noticed was the lights all being off and the flies. There were flies all over. Lee wasn't anywhere to be seen right off. So my dad looked around the house. He said that he got halfway into the hall and he heard a weird noise in the back bedroom. A repetitive noise. He said that he first thought that it was a clicking noise. But as he got closer, it started to sound more wet. It didn't even occur to him that the dog would still be in the house. The hungry dog. He opened the door to the back bedroom and he said the stink hit him in the face like a ton of bricks. He almost passed out from the strength of the stench. He threw up right there in the doorway. Before he even looked, Lee was in his bed. Or what was left of him. His head and shoulders were intact. But he was decaying rapidly in the heat. From the chest down. Dad said he was missing most of his flesh. His gut was entirely gone. The dog still had her muzzle in him and was working on a hole in his legs. He said that the dog didn't even stop or notice him. He slammed the door and booked it home. Comment from Correctmeifimdull. So this actually happened pretty recently and I hope I can properly do this story justice. This happened the weekend before Christmas. So a few details to set up the scene. When you walk down the stairs of my house you can see the front door at about the last 2 steps. Also, my roommate's dog is a little shit and claws at the blinds so anybody can see in through the bottom of the window. Anyways, me and my buddy are up in my room because I keep my good beer in my mini fridge because I can't trust anybody. On our way down the stairs we're just having normal, casual conversation about work or some shit. Then we get to the point where we can see the front door. and there is this creature crouched down smiling in with their face pressed to the window and staring through our souls with black eyes. I completely freeze and my friend says, "What the fuck is that?" My first thought is that someone we know was knocking on the door, but we didn't hear it being upstairs. After about 1 second of me focusing and I realize that is absolutely not the case. My friend yells this time, "What the fuck is that?" and he bolts back upstairs, leaving me to face this thing on my own. I see that this creature is a female, and it scared the shit out of me because I expected her to be as scared as us and try to run away. But she was smiling, showing about 2 teeth, and seemed overly pleased to see me, which gave me the total creeps. I didn't know if my door was locked. I didn't know if she was going to try to come in and do witchcraft on us. I didn't even really know how to move anymore. I just tried to evaluate what my move should be because I was sure back upstairs was not the correct choice. And then she started to speak, but I couldn't understand what the hell she was saying through the glass. Then she pointed in my house, and that's when I realized she was pointing at my Christmas lights. See, I host a huge Christmas party every year and go all out in decorations, and this year we turned a refrigerator into an 8-foot snowman. This is what she was coming to see. Once I realized this, I started laughing quite uncontrollably, still scared and confused because she just kept staring at me. My friend came down and we moved out of her sight. I let the dogs in so they'd bark at her and maybe she'd leave. They did bark and we stayed out of view. But she started jiggling the door handle. Turned out it was locked, trying to get in. I looked at my buddy like, what in the actual fucking fuck is she thinking? So I run over there and push the dogs back and decide to take the plunge and go outside. It was a 4'6" homeless woman who truly looked like a troll. Literally 2 teeth and very dark eyes. But she turned out to be nice. I decided to chit-chat with her for a few and then tell her we were leaving. This strategy was a success. The worst part is that we told a bunch of friends that night. And I've had 3 people crouching down in that scary ass position staring at me when I've come downstairs. I can't trust anybody. Edit. So creating this GIF just took me absolutely forever. First time for everything. This is a video I took before the incident to show people the Christmas setup we had going on. You can sort of see the door with the window showing at the bottom. That's where the lady was crouched down at with her head cocked sideways staring up at us. Sorry for the poor quality, but I finally got it there. http://imager.com CJ me3a. Comment from deleted. Once in high school I was babysitting a teacher's kids with my ex and the parents were super late, so we decided to stay in the living room even though the TV and such was downstairs so we could leave as soon as they got back. They lived in this huge house overlooking the woods and this little pond area, so they had big windows installed throughout the home. At about 12:30 I started getting annoyed, so I gave the parents a call and they said that they were on their way back. By this point, the huge windows were really starting to freak me out, but whatever. I was with my boyfriend and the parents were on their way. A few minutes later, we heard the doorknob to the garage jiggle. We thought it was the parents letting themselves in at first, but it continued to jiggle for about 20 seconds but then stopped. I started freaking out and walked towards the kitchen where the door was and glanced through the window that overlooked the deck. I'll never forget it. There was a strobe light of some on with a man standing in front of it, so he was silhouetted. And he was just standing there. I start panicking basically, and the light just stops blinking suddenly. My heart had pretty much stopped. I assume he just left after that, but I called the parents and they were still approximately 20 minutes out, so it couldn't have been them. When I told them about what happened, they informed me of their war vet neighbor who would apparently wander the property at night and may have viewed me as a threat for some reason. Why they didn't tell me that beforehand or tell him that we were going to be there, I'll never know. But hey, I got paid, though not enough to even go back to that house again. Comment from Commander_Prime. Background. It's after midnight. I'm the only one up in the house. There's 3 feet of snow outside, and we're probably going to lose power any minute. Me. Let's read the creepy thread and not sleep until Wednesday. Her. Comment from schapellemcgarry. I was sitting downstairs minding my own business when my sister yells down for me to come upstairs. I argue back for her to come down and stop being lazy. This goes on for around 2 minutes and I am highly irritated. All of a sudden I go cold and realize my sister is in Japan for travel, but it was her exact voice. So at this point I am freaking out and I grab a knife and go upstairs. Walk into my sister's room and the rain on the window was dripping down except for one circle around the size of a plate. which the rain was not touching but drizzling around the edges. So very strange. I called my sister and she confirmed she was fine and had no idea what it was upstairs. Comment from deleted. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe.